Hi there, it's Michelle here. I hope you're doing really well today. I wanted to hop on and quickly talk about something that came up in our Facebook group. One of our members wrote this, and I think it's so important for us sensitive souls to understand this. And she writes, I always regret not listening to my intuition, but sometimes anxiety gets in the way of following my intuition. How can I separate the two? Okay, this is really, if people understood this, your life would be so much smoother and you would move in the direction of the things that you're supposed to be doing in the world if you understood this. So the best I can, let's talk about it. So we are empaths and sensitives, right? I think the biggest gift we have with that is our intuition. For ourselves first, for our families, and then honestly, I think the intuitives, the sensitives of the world probably want to help people using that gift, but that's up to you. But let's talk about this first. So, hi Robin. Okay, so let's talk about anxiety and intuition. I think a lot of us sensitives have high anxiety, but let's just talk about it. So Mary Ellen said that she gets an intuitive hit, but then she gets anxiety and then doesn't follow her intuition, and then she regrets it. Hi, Christine. So let's talk about this. Here's one thing I think happens to sensitive souls. You get that intuitive hit, right? You are intuitively guided. You know, like to move into this direction or to go here. And what happens is, if it's something new that you're being directed or guided to do, or if it's something that's not your normal way of doing it, our bodies will flare up with anxiety. For example, it happens to me all the time still. I'll get an intuitive hit, and if it's something I'm not used to doing, I'll get an anxiety flare up. My body just naturally flares up when I do anything new. Does that make sense? Now, the old days, when I would have felt the intuition, and if it was something new or out of the ordinary, I'd get the anxiety flare up, and then I would think that was my intuition telling me, like, don't go there, don't do it. But now what I do is, if I get an intuitive hit, and then I feel the anxiety flare up, 9 times out of 10, it'll just be because it's something new. So I say to myself, is my intuition telling me something? Or am I just having an anxiety flare up because I'm doing something new? 9 times out of 10, maybe almost always, 99% of the time, I'm just having a little flare up because I'm doing something out of the ordinary. I'm doing something new. Does that make sense? So I think, Mary Ellen and anybody else, the first thing to do is when you feel that flare up after you get an intuitive hit, you decide, is this a flare up because I'm doing something new or out of the ordinary? You're not doing your regular pattern. If it is, then that's not your intuition. Do you see how you can separate the two? And again, 99% of the time for me, when I get an intuitive hit, it's correct. And I can just bypass the anxiety. I'll just go, oh, I'm having that flare up again because I'm doing something new. Okay. And I still go do the new thing, and then the flare up subsides. Or I also do techniques to calm down the flare up. Does that make sense? If we as sensitives, because again, our intuition is our best ability, if you could understand that separation, that the anxiety is probably coming from just your body, your nervous system flaring up from doing something new. Because remember, we're sensitives. So sensitive souls flare up more. They see more. They hear more, right? We feel more. So somebody who might have a little anxiety over something new, a sensitive will get a flare up usually. Does that make sense? Okay. And then the other thing I wanted to say about, that's probably the biggest thing. And then I was reading the thread and people were saying, You need to trust yourself. You need to trust your intuition. And I totally agree. And that is easier said than done. So I know this is going to sound like a plug. And I kind of, I don't mean it to be, but I really believe in it. In my psychic and intuitive development group, here's what really happens. We practice our intuition with each other and we give each other feedback. And what happens is you start to believe this about yourself. Huh, I was right about that. Huh. It literally builds your confidence in what you think and feel. And it builds your confidence because we practice and you get feedback. And yeah, that's a little scary at first and some people just observe. But I promise if you practice with somebody, it will build your confidence in your own intuition. So then what happens is when you start to build your trust within your own self, within your own intuition, when you go out into the world or when your intuition tells you to do something or move in this direction, you trust it even more because you have so many experiences of working with people and them giving you feedback that you'll trust it for yourself. I hope that makes sense. Hi, Beth. Terry asks, what if crying has become the place I go now whenever I push out to feel? Terry, can you give me a little more detail about that? I'm going to try to speak about it from what little I know. So are you saying when you start to feel, you notice that you go to crying a lot? It's your go-to place? If I'm getting that right, the best, or to intuit. I still don't know if I know what I'm going to speak about it, but you correct me if I'm wrong. If you're noticing that a lot of crying is happening, has become the place I go now whenever I push out to feel. So if crying, it happened to me too when I really started to open up to my intuitive abilities. I noticed I cried a lot. I see it with other people too. They become very emotional. And I have a couple theories of why that is. It's not really important now. What I say is let the crying happen. It's part of you processing, and it won't stay that way. It's just let that be part of your process. Does that make sense? You will evolve. That will eventually dissipate, and you'll have a new layer of something coming up. Does that make sense? I hope that made sense. It's pretty normal though. When I started going into mediumship and giving readings, I would bawl my eyes out in front of a group of people. And I would say to myself, why am I crying so much? And there's a couple reasons why. We can talk about that another day. Does anybody else have any questions about your intuition? Following your intuition, listening to it, trusting it, and then the biggest thing is acting on it. It's huge. And oh, good, Terry. That made sense. That's awesome. Ladies, this sounds cheesy, but if I can get you to really understand how you're wired and see what, I'm going to cry now, that the way you're wired is a gift. If you really understand how you're wired and use it to plug yourself into the way you're wired and live that way, life is really magical. It's awesome. And intuition's a really big part of that. And developing that, trusting it, acting on it, life becomes really magical. And yeah, there's a lot of, when you really trust your intuition, you will go down some unknown paths. And as a sensitive, you can have anxiety flare-ups. But like if you're in a supportive group or if you've got great people around you, you will move in that direction. You will be supported and loved. And that's probably another reason why I love our psychic and intuitive development group. You go farther, greater together. It's just the way it goes. I hope that made sense. I probably rambled on too long about that. Oh, Cindy, thank you. I love you too. I really appreciate it. Okay, thanks, ladies. Have a great day. And follow your intuition. And even though we don't know all the details to that, just trust it. Okay, one more thing somebody said. Christine, I have found out I can't trust my boyfriend, but I love him. So Christine, yeah, there's intuitive stuff to that, but there's probably inner work to do with that too that we can talk about. Just PM me or reach out to me if you want to talk about that. And Beth says thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. Bye.